Hey guys, welcome back. Hope you're having a good day today. Good day for me. Good day for me. I went to the country and chilled out for a few hours and came home. Uh, so, what's this video about? Well, I'm thinking, you're driving. It's an hour and a half drive type deal. Thinking in my head and stuff, and then what popped in my head was because I'm a cologne freak. Uh, I got thinking about one cologne in particular, and that'll be the first one I do here. But how colognes made an instant impact on me. You know what I mean? Colognes that either I smelled in a store or I smelled on somebody, and I either bought immediately uh, or I had to buy eventually. They would not leave my mind. You know what I mean? You guys know what I mean. You smell something and you just don't have the money at the time, but you're like, I'm going to get that eventually. And, it could be years, but you pick it up and you're like, yes, finally got it. So these are only going to be five. I could do a goddamn 50 list with stuff like that. But these are five that immediately popped in my head. A couple of them are older. A couple of them are relatively, you know, modern, new. But yeah, so I hope I explained that what I mean. I'll try one more time real quick. Basically, fragrances that I smelled that made an immediate impact on me that I had to own either right away or if I couldn't afford right away, sometime in the near future or in the distant future, I had to own. And the first one is the one that started it all. I was driving home and thinking about it, and that's Fahrenheit by Dior. I remember, buddy, and this is in a review. You know what? Most of you know what all these smell like, or you should. Masculine, alpha, male-ish, gasoline, blah, blah, whatever. Uh, I remember, buddy, I was just starting high school, so it was like grade 10. I was like 13, 14 years old, and this guy was like 19 in grade 12. He had obviously failed a couple times. But he was good with the women, you know what I mean, all that stuff. He dressed nice, and he sprayed this on one time was before he was going to hang out with his girlfriend at the time. He was taking the afternoon off, and we were all standing there, and I was immediately hit with it in the air and thought, this is one of the. I'd never smelled it before, and it's funny because it'd been out like 10 years before that, 10, 11 years, but I was like, I had never smelled it before. I was like, well, I credit stuff my dad wore and stuff like, preferred stock, Cody stuff, things like that from a few years before I smelled this as really starting my journey, but this really made me want to buy a fragrance. The first time I wanted to buy a fragrance, a particular fragrance. I'd gone into stores for, like I said, just kind of smelled a couple things, bought it, but this was the first one that really started my absolute love of really a love of fragrances. I shouldn't say that. I had love of really. I can't explain what I mean, but just this really desire to get as many fragrances as I could. That I hope to find one that smelled better than this. And over the years, I have, of course, but I still has a soft spot in my heart. It's yeah, it's great. It's still great. Still great. Still love it. The next one was Jean Paul Gaultier La Mall. Still one of my favorite fragrances. Still more than wearable today, despite what some fragrance aficionados are going to tell you. No, women still love it. It still smells great. Still performs just fine. And not as good as the original, original formulation. No, but it's fine. It's a good performer. And I smelled this one on a friend. And it took me a couple years to get it because I couldn't afford it. But I immediately smelled it on. It was at a party, if I'm not mistaken, a party or like a football banquet, something. I can't remember now, but I smelled it on him. And it's kind of the same thing as Fahrenheit, but not as intense. I was like, that's really nice. I really like that. And then I started smelling it walking around the malls and everything. A few people were wearing it, and I was like, really had to get it. And I eventually, this is a bottle I had to rebuy because I lost my original bottle somewhere, and I don't know where, and that happens from time to time. I've got a dozen fragrances. I don't know where they're at right now. I can't find them. But, yeah, this is definitely one that when I first smelled it, I was like, I've got to get a bottle of that. I have to, by hook or by crook. And eventually, I got one. Like I said, a few years later, and I haven't looked back. Still probably in my top 5, if not my top 3 fragrances of all time. I love them all. I love all the powderiness, the slight sweet, all that stuff that's in it. You know what the mall smells like. Oh, just gorgeous. Just gorgeous. Next, we're getting into a little more modern things. Although this is going to be 10 years old next year. You know, basically in 6 months, this is going to be 10 years old. And that's hard to believe, right? Because when I show you what it is, you're not going to believe it. Look it up. I'm not kidding. It's almost retro. And that's Christian Dior Sauvage. I remember smelling it a few times on people before I even really knew what it was. And at the store, I smelled it, and I was like, oh my God, I love it. And I still love it to this day. I know it gets hated on, and it's a victim of its own success. That's perfectly, you know, it's a cool thing to hate. I get it. But for me, it's still just a great fragrance. Citrus, pepper, and that metallic like ambroxy, just gorgeous. And a performer, even the new stuff. I don't care what anyone says. Yeah, it may not perform as well as this stuff, an original formulation, but it's not far off. And it's a compliment getter. It's one of those fragrance DNAs that women just love. They always will. There's nothing, but it's almost 10 years old. Hard to believe, eh? I know, but yeah. Next is Prada Black. I had smelled it in the store, and I'm kind of cheating on this one a little bit because I remember the first time smelling it, I didn't really like it, but I didn't understand it, if that makes sense. It just wasn't anything, you know, it was like a little too powdery, a little too soft, a little too sweet, a little this and that, all that stuff, a little too spicy. But as my palate developed a couple years later, and I was like, I seen somebody was selling it online, so I said, well, I'll go and, you know, tell them I'll buy it, and I'll give it a sniff, and if I still hate it, then, you know. No, I shouldn't hate it. I never hated it. I just didn't understand it, right? And I got there, and I gave it a spray on the back of my hand before I bought it from him. And immediately, I was like, yes, I got to have this. It reminds me almost of an updated version of Le Male, if that makes sense. Vanilla, powdery, sweet, spicy, a little more modern than the Male, but not that the Male's old or anything, but you know what I mean? Like, I just love this stuff. It's got almost a mysterious nature about it, really. And it's just so good. And I sprayed it, and I was like, yes, I got to have it. I bought it right there, and I believe I got it for like $40, $50. I can't remember now exactly how much money I gave him, but it wasn't much. It was a full bottle. So I'm sure he stole it. But either way, I don't care. I got it now, and I paid good money for it. Real money. Didn't steal it. Next was By the Fireplace, Replica. I had heard a bunch of people talking about it. Never really smelled it. I went down to Sephora. Sephora, I just opened there. Was it last year or the year before? Whenever I got this in my city, and they had it there. And I told the story at first when I first seen the Replica line. I seen them when I was in Montreal. I thought, oh, they're just expensive dupes. I'm not spending that kind of money on a dupe. And I walked by them, didn't smell them, because I thought, you know, rightfully so, Replica. I thought it was just a dupe line, right? And I thought it kind of weird that Sephora was selling them, but I was like, whatever. But anyway, long story short, they came, I smelled it. I remember spraying it on a card in the store. I'm thinking, oh my God, who could not like that? It's sweet, smoky, woody. It's just gorgeous. That is still gorgeous. My God. And I remember smelling it and thinking, literally, who could hate this? Who could not like this fragrance? There's no, I mean, I'm sure there's people out there, but right then in that moment, it's like, this is just gorgeous, and it still is gorgeous. I mean, a little heavy for the spring or in summer, but yeah, it really does have that kind of sweet fireplace or sweet roasted marshmallows on a fireplace kind of vibe to it. It's the best way I can describe it. Oh, it's just beautiful. It's beautiful. So, yeah, that's it, guys. Just a quick little 5 fragrances that really caught my attention and I needed to buy. So, let me know if you have your fragrances like that, because I'm sure you've got at least one, if not, like me, fucking 100 of them. But one that you had to buy. You know what I'd really like to know? One you needed, you smelled. I'm going to do a video because there are a couple that I smelled that I never knew what they were. I never bothered asking, and it was years later I finally smelled them and was like, that was it, and I bought them immediately. That's a cool video. I'm going to do that video too. All right, guys. Peace, love, be good to each other, and be good to yourselves.